Vocation to love.
I'm in a silent retreat, and I broke silence to answer your call.
Okay.
And I had to get the permission of my spiritual director to make a phone call. And I didn't want to let you think I was going to ignore you.
Wow. Very cool.
Spiritual fatherhood, like I have never seen or found ever again. I even one time had a priest
Beautiful.
in an airport see me in clerics and say, "Where are you from?" And this was when Carlson was still the bishop in Saginaw. And I said, "Saginaw." And he goes, "Is it true?" And I go, "What?" "Is it true that he knows you all? And he knows your families? And he cares about you?"
Good Lord.
And I said, "Yeah." And he told me what diocese he was from. And he said, "I'm scared of my bishop. I can't have a conversation with my bishop because I don't know what he'll do with what I say to him."
Oh, Lord.
And I have to tell you, though, post-Carlson, pre-Carlson, that's exactly what I thought a bishop was. So
that's very powerful. And so
well,
he was
this is what the church needs.
That's right. This is what they're supposed to do.
And so we talk for 30 minutes and I'm crying on the phone, telling him everything I've tried and my trials and tribulations and my desire to become a priest. And he says, "I need to meet you." And when we did eventually meet face to face, he asks me a question that meant nothing to me. And I guess because I was at Steubenville, he assumed I was a Stubby.
Yes, I know what that means. Right.
And he goes, "If you're here because of me," because I didn't know at the time that Carlson was like one of the founding fathers of Net Ministries. And that Carlson is one of the founding fathers of St. Paul Outreach in St. Paul, Minnesota. And all of these young adult ministries and these things that set kids on fire for the faith.
Yes.
I didn't know who he was. And he goes, "If you're here because of me, I don't want to talk to you." Basically, and I didn't know what he meant. And so being who I am, I told him the truth. I said, "Look, I don't know who you are or who you think you are. I'm here because I think God is calling me to be a priest." And he won't shut up. And I asked him to send me a bishop, and here you are. And so if this ain't going to work, I'm cool with that. I've already been rejected by some of the best.
Sure.
Too old, military doesn't work, engineers don't work out in our program, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you're already wasting all this money going to theology school, and we're going to make you do it all over again. Heard it all. He stands up and walks out of the room. And I go, "Oh no, your mouth did it again." He comes in, I start back. "I'm really sorry if if I said something." He looks at me and he goes, this is the first time that he told me to shut up. He goes, "Shut up." He said, "I want to get an application for seminary. I need you to fill this out and get this back to me soon." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "If I don't ordain you, I'm going to have to hire you. I need somebody like you working for me, whether it's a priest or a layperson." And I don't know what he saw. And I still don't know what he saw. He still answers my phone calls. He called me on Holy Thursday.
Wow.
To thank me for being a priest. And I said, "I didn't do anything. You're the one who made it happen."
That's wonderful.
I did my best to screw it up.
It's a great story. Father, because we're running a little out of time here. I wanted to that was great. No, that was really cool. So if you could to maybe tell us a little bit about two things. a brief overview of what the traditional Latin Mass means to you, and then quickly, because I know you just graduated from law school, tell me about what you're doing now, what you're looking for in the future. But
Well, as far as the traditional Latin Mass, I was, and people will ask me this, and in all sincerity, the answer is I was tricked. Why are you doing this? No. And I guess they want me to say, oh, I just love lace. I can't get enough lace. Silk, silk, silk. Nothing but the finest for baby Jesus and his lovely priests. No, I was tricked into it. I was tricked into it by a priest of the Archdiocese of Bratislava, who now is back in Slovakia ministering to the English-speaking embassy crowd.
Yeah, sure.
But he was in the U.S. at the time, and he calls me up when I was a deacon, and he says, "What are you doing on?" And it was a Sunday, the last Sunday in June, and I was ordained June 5th in 2009. And the last Sunday in June of 2009, he was going to have it. He says, "Well, because in this 2007, the motu proprio of Benedict XVI liberated the Latin Mass to any priest or pastor."
Yes.
And he says, "Well, it's been 2 years. He felt comfortable with the Latin Mass, and he wanted me." He says, "Don't worry. I'm not going to make you do the Latin Mass. Can you do the Novus Ordo in English facing an altar? It's training wheels, baby steps." But this is like September, October of 2008. I was going to be ordained in June of 2009.
Okay.
And I said, "Yeah, sure." So in my practicums of practicing for the Mass, I paid attention to the rubrics that are actually written to face an altar, because it says the priest turns towards the people. Well, if I'm already facing the people, what am I doing? A little spin, do I do a little pirouette? And so the rubrics basically presume you're at an altar, at a high altar. And the adaptations then would be for facing the people all the time. And so I get that down, and about a month or two later, he calls me up and he says, "Things are moving just a little faster. Can you do it in Latin?" Okay. Mass, new Mass in Latin.
That's no walk in the park. I mean, most people tell me that takes like a year, right?
Well, I don't know. I just started. I ended up with, I had the Gregorian Missal, which has English and Latin facing pages. I bought Ordo Missae in Cantu, which is basically all of the chants of the new Mass, and just kept going through it, page after page, just sit there and going, and at this point I was done with seminary. I managed to get through and get a recommendation to a bishop that I should be ordained. He made me a deacon. And at this point, I got all the time in the world on my hands. So I'm sitting all the time in the world on my hands, also running a house for seminarians for Bishop Carlson. And I would go through this stuff, I'd hum it to myself. I'd hum through the chants. I'd mouth the words. Being a linguist, I knew that you couldn't just think it. You had to get the muscles engaged. So I would have to say it out loud to form, muscle memories and all of that stuff.
Sure.
And then he calls again in around Christmas time or January. He goes, we're going to do the Latin Mass, the old Latin Mass, starting in March. And so June, by then, we'll be three months into it. Can you learn the Latin Mass? And I'm going, I don't know. And I go to my mentor at the parish where I was as the deacon, Father Larry Pashik, may he rest in peace, wonderful man. And I say, "Larry, I got a question." And he goes, "What? Sit down, sit down." And I said, "I got this friend. He's a priest from Slovakia. He's got a Slovak parish, and he wants me to learn the Latin Mass." I said, "But we don't do that here. And we don't do that anywhere here." And I said, "I should just tell him no, right?" And he looks at me and he goes, "You're not stupid. Figure it out." And he goes, "Don't do it here. But if somebody wants you to do it and they've got permission to do it, then go for it."
Sure.
But he gave me the best advice ever.
What?
He said, do your best and know that your best to God is good enough. He said, too often in that Mass, in the old Latin Mass, priests would go hyper scrupulous. And he said, don't do it.
Oh, but should be making sure because of the pressure of making sure you read the black and do the red. Is that how it goes?
Yes.
And you can't miss the word or mispronounce the word and get all freaked out about it.
Right. Exactly. Do your best. Do your best. Now,
because I've read it, I can understand that, especially if you were not proficient in Latin. I've read through it.
You need to make the right noises. You need to say the right things at the right time. You need to follow along. You need to make sense of it. So I ordered the DVD from EWTN that was made by the Fraternity of St. Peter. I downloaded everything I could find off the internet, printed it out, read through it, highlighted it, practiced it, went through it. And he said, and I said, well, wait, I said, I'm not going to say yes until I think it was February of 05.
Okay.
And I said, there's enough variability in how different places do the Latin Mass. I've watched different videos. You have to go through it with me at your church. And she said, okay, come by for lunch on such and such a date. So I show up and we go through it. And throughout, I'm stopping him. And I'm going, wait, what about this? Wait, what about that? Wait, doesn't it say to do this? And he looks at me and he goes, you know this better than I do.
Really?
Let's get lunch. That was the end of the lesson. That was the end of the lesson. But I was tricked into it. I was told I would be doing an English Mass facing an altar.
That's great. I got. Hey, have you, for the folks at home, we talked about this a little before the show. Mass of the Ages. Have you seen all three, or just the one that?
I've just seen the one. But the interesting thing is, and I think I forget who makes this observation, is people are convinced that it's a language thing, and they make it clear that it's not. These are two completely different animals.
Tell them what you said, because I think this is very, very telling.
And they show they use two graphics. They do it very graphically. Is they show a little picture frame and they have an outline of the Mass of the 6th, and then they start filling in the blanks with the prayers for the Latin Mass and rearranging it in the way, and they end up pulling out two side leaps. It's the cutest animation.
Yes.
But and I believe the number it's somewhere around double the prayers. And then they had another clever graphic where they show the Mass of Paul VI and the number of altar kisses and signs of the cross and genuflections as, like little icons.
Sure.
And then they split the screen and there's the Latin Mass with 72 genuflections and signs of the cross and crazy amounts of stuff.
Sure.
And I mean, it is overwhelming, and to go from one to the other is a scary proposition.
Yes. Father, if I could give you my observation very quickly. I was introduced to the Latin Mass a few years ago, and I kind of stumbled into it. I clipped one of the books from church, brought it back the next week, and I read through it. Right, and then I went on the internet and I looked at it, and then I'll use the quote Michael Hitchborn told me when he explained to me when I was telling him about my experience. He says, "Yes, that's your inheritance that was stolen." The point was that as I looked at and I read through the Mass and I watched the part where the priest is doing this, and then I looked up as to why. I just could not believe the magnitude of the beauty of the TLM.
Mm-hmm.
It was majestic, I guess is the word I would use.
And from a priest side perspective,
yeah,
it's a lot of work.
Oh yeah,
it's a lot of work. And to ask a priest who regularly offers the Latin Mass,
yes,
why do you do that? And that, to me, the parallel to that is to have someone who is in a wheelchair, morbidly obese, who can hardly stand up without two canes, huffing and puffing with oxygen, turning to somebody who is a marathon runner and going, "Why do you run marathons? It seems like a waste of time to me. You're not really going anywhere." And you're like,
huh?
busting my hump to do it.
Yes.
So, and then and the whole point is so my first Latin Mass on that Sunday in June of 2009, I got lost over and over again. I said the wrong thing at the wrong place, and then I had to go back and say it at the right place, and I missed something and I had to go back. And I mean, but when I was done, I remember, and it was, it's kind of like some of the primitive rituals where, they the kid has to stay within a circle with a fire in the wilderness for overnight while all this, and then after that they go, now you are a man. I remember thinking,
great analogy.
Now I am a priest. And I had been ordained for 3 weeks. And I had offered Mass every day, sometimes twice a day. Every day. And so 21 minimum Masses. I offered this one Mass to the best of my ability and trying to keep it on track and not get lost and not set anything on fire and not set myself on fire and not fall off the steps and all of that. And I remember thinking, boy, oh boy, oh boy, if anybody ever told me they were going to leave the priesthood, I would encourage them to learn the Latin Mass and to do it for a month privately.
Yes.
To impress upon themselves, any priest, to impress upon themselves, because the Latin Mass is the foundation for the Mass of Paul VI.
Right.
And if you take the Mass of Paul VI, you are on the second floor of a building with no first floor and no foundation.
Yes.
To take it by itself, you can't take it in isolation. And this is not. It's not the first time this has happened. I won't mention names, but I was told this apocryphal story of a great theologian of the Second Vatican Council was doing his doctoral dissertation in the 60s and wrote what he thought was this stellar work and was told by another theologian who was also noted in the church, very nice, but you're starting in the middle. Don't presume that they have the foundation of the faith. Give them a foundation and then start running where you are.
Sure.
And I learned that in theology class. I heard that story. And the thing is Archbishop Alex Sample has said this. Whenever there's a lacuna, when there's a vacancy in the instructions for the new, he goes back to the old.
Right. Oh, wow. I got to tell you, Father, I know of 2 priests, just anecdotally, coming across the world that by their own admission has told me that their vocation was saved because of the TLM.
Wow. Oh, I wouldn't know because it was 3 weeks into my vocation as a priest.
And I that's why listening to you and beautiful description of that journey. If I could, we'll move it along. Just to kind of, for lack of a better word, wrap it up, Father, could you tell me about, or unless you had something else?
Well, I do want to touch on a couple of other things for the Latin Mass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By all means.
Because just learning it was not enough.
Okay.
And so probably a year and a half later, I signed up for the Learn the Latin Mass course from the Fraternity of St. Peter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
And I paid my money and I hopped in my truck and I drove to Nebraska in the middle of nowhere. And I got there and I was welcomed. They walked me in. They walked me in through the back door, but they're like, oh, you should come around to the front. I go, I'm already packed. I've been driving for 20 hours. Let's just get. And so they get me to a room and they say, well, did you bring your own books? I said, well, I thought I only needed to bring my own books if I was doing the Mass of Paul VI. They go, well, that's right. I says, well, I'm here to learn the Latin Mass. I'm going to offer it every day. And so they ended up assigning a subdeacon who was, this close to ordination. So, and this kid had spent all of his seminary time serving this Mass, learning how to offer this Mass. And so he was my server. So that first morning, bleary-eyed at like 5 o'clock in the morning after driving in, I go into the sacristy, everything's laid out, I vest for the mass, go out, and they had side altars behind the main altar, and they go, we just ask that at this time of day you whisper so that we're not praying in the main chapel, which is just like inches behind me. And, we're praying and you're going to go, Dominus Vobiscum at the top of your lungs. Just kind of keep it down. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go through everything. And then I go to breakfast. And the instructor sits down and he says, well, I talked to the subdeacon. Why are you here? I said, what are you talking about? He goes, your mass is good enough. And I said, no. I need to offer this mass to the best of my ability. I want you to take this pencil and sharpen it to a fine point. I said, I watched the video that you guys did at EWTN. And I watched all the scenes and all the views umpteen million times, and I'm not that good. The best of my ability, well, good enough for God right here, right now, is never good enough. I want to do better. And about four years later, out of the blue, somebody says to me, and I was offering the Latin Mass privately, maybe once a week, public, maybe once every other month, and all sung, publicly all sung masses, and privately all low masses. Somebody said to me, we want to buy you a breviary. And I said, well, it's available on the internet, and it's expensive. It's several $100s. And they said, we want to buy you a breviary. And will you pray it if we buy it? We don't want it just on a shelf. We want you to pray it. And I said, well, yeah. I said, I guarantee I will do my best to pray it for 1 year. So 4 years, almost exactly 4 years later, I start praying the old breviary aloud, because you pray it out loud.
Oh, okay. Wasn't aware of that. How long does it take, Father?
Depends. It all depends. I mean, I think eventually I was able to do it in maybe 90 minutes, but initially it was several hours just to get through it, because you don't know where you are and you're turning pages and you're trying to fill in the blanks and you're, cross-referencing. But it eventually just becomes part of who you are. But what happened was, the next time I did a sung mass, I didn't have a problem with any pronunciation. I had read through the Psalms daily.
Yes.
And read through things of, daily. And remember what I talked about, the linguist, muscle memory, forming the word.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I'm looking at a text on the screen and I remember it. Oh, that's Psalm whatever. I'm looking at the text on the book, and I'm like, and it's an introit, or it's an offertorio, or it's a communion antiphon. And I'm going, I know that. I've read that. I read that half a dozen times. The prayers at the foot of the altar, Psalm 42. I'm like, I know this. It's in the breviary. And you're just like, this is ridiculously easy. They support each other. And one formed me to be a priest who prayed that mass without any difficulty. And so that was the next step in sharpening that pencil, was praying.
You know what I noticed, to tie in from your initial comments, when we were talking about your background in engineering, everything I use the term binomial equation, right? Structured finance, both sides equal. What you just said, everything fit. It made sense, right? It was, again, that to underscore and underline that adherence to mental and intellectual discipline, right? Yeah. You saw it immediately. I just thought that was a cool tie-in.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is that, learning that mass in February of 2005 and being told, you know it better than I do. I could have stopped.
I know. Key point. But to be fair, speak to that for a moment. You could have stopped. Why didn't you? I know you wanted to be better, but where'd that come from? Tell me about that.
Look at a crucifix.
Great answer.
Look at
Dumb question.
but do you not? And this is a good spiritual question. Where in your life do you not want to do your best for God?
Right.
And that's what you need to work on.
That's great.
That's what you need to talk to your spiritual director about. Where in your life, and also where in your life are you afraid to let God in?
Oh, wow.
Because if he's infinite and he's everything and he's everywhere, then why would you give him a half measure? Why wouldn't you want to do the best? And knowing your best is never this, tomorrow my best is going to be better than today's best.
Especially after looking at the crucifix, which is what you just said.
He gave his all.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
He gave his all.
Great answer.
And then he said, before that, he said, follow me. Uh-oh. What am I supposed to do? Well, Jesus, not today. I got a headache. No.
I have things I got to do. Sorry, dude.
And there's never, you can never be satisfied that you're at your best unless you know it's your best and you can't get any better. I mean, basketball, don't count on me to be anything but the guy who drops the ball. But it's, you know what your best is and you do your best. And so I wanted that every Mass. There's a little quip that's in the Missionaries of Charity chapels. Priest of God, offer this Mass as if it's your first Mass, your last Mass, your only Mass. Now, what does that mean? Are you going to mumble your way through it? Are you gonna cut corners? Are you going to take out all those pieces that nobody really cares? Nobody will notice if I take this out. Nobody will notice if I do this. Nobody will notice if I don't genuflect. Nobody will notice. God notices.
Yes.
I promise you, your guardian angel notices.
Well, I have been to several of your Masses, Father, and I would tell you that I did notice a discernible lack of liturgical dancers and things. So I think you're pretty on.
My leotard is too big. I've lost too much weight. Now, before we get too deeply into this, and those are the 2 points I wanted to talk about. That your best can always be better.
Very cool.
But about law school.
Oh yeah, I got, actually you caught me. I got lost in that last story, and
I was afraid of that. So I'm going to bring us back into now.
Go.
Okay.
Now you graduated from, by the way, Father, congratulations, just graduated from law school.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the graduation is now in 3 weeks, and I'm still eagerly awaiting my grades, which I won't probably see for another couple. I know one raw grade, and please God, curve. But I did pass as far as I know, and I'm pretty certain that I did not flunk my last several classes. So I know I've at least passed. I just don't want to jack my GPA. I actually was able in the last year to nose to the grindstone and boost my GPA better than I was doing when I was kind of stringing it along. Not that matters, but I would like to do my best even in law school. But why law school? And this is my spiritual director from the moment I was a priest said to me, you need a hobby. And then he said, you need a challenge. And then he said, you need an intellectual challenge. More than reading pulp science fiction, more than watching Netflix. We didn't have Netflix back 15 years ago, but still, more than watching TV, watching reruns. You need a hobby that's going to keep your wheels lubricated in your brain and keep you thinking and keep you doing stuff. And he says, and eventually he says, well, maybe you should go back to college, just night school, and pick something fun. Well, look at a map. Saginaw is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And our cities were all Rust Belt cities, which are kind of sort of small. Sure. And colleges are very much directed towards very practical things. Nursing, not going to happen. Engineering, already got that.
Already been there.
Business, already got a minor in business in engineering school. So, I was kind of like, I don't know, agricultural, probably not. So I said, I don't know what I would do. And my spiritual director said, we were having a conversation about something completely different, but it was probably related to the scandals in the church. He said, well, what about law school? I said, what? He says, well, he says, everybody's kind of talking out of this side of their mouth and that side of their mouth. And nobody's really, maybe you need to look into law school, and at least it'll get your wheels spinning in your brain.
Sure.
And I thought, I had just had dinner with a bunch of priests who were retiring. And I thought, well, maybe I can learn to write wills and trusts and study elder law and help these guys in their dotage so that they don't get taken advantage of, so that they don't end up spending all their money on magic beans and living on a street corner selling pencils. So I thought, elder law and whatever. So I enroll in law school, and I find out that wills and trusts and elder law are kind of classes you take in your last year. So you go through a certain foundation. The foundation is torts, civil wrongs, contracts, constitutional law, criminal law. And criminal law is probably the biggest chunk of what you cover. You've got crim law 1, crim law 2, criminal procedure, evidence, all in civil procedure 1, civil procedure 2, all courtroom actions. And, it's a small law school in Lansing, Cooley Law, and the professors kind of sort of know who's who, even though you may be only popping in there twice a week or something, or, now in COVID, you're popping in on a screen like the Brady Bunch. And so I get kind of pulled aside, and they say, I want you to meet somebody. And they introduce me to the coordinator for the public defender clinic. You interested in criminal law, David? And I go, and so then I went to a couple seminars on appellate criminal law, and they were, talking about what's happening in the state of Michigan. And so 5 years ago, I did my first public defender indigent criminal defense clinic, which I figured was going to be very academic. And next thing you know, they're going, okay, talk to the judge. Here's your client. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to go to prison because I'm an idiot. And you do that for 14 weeks.
Wow.
And trust me, if anything pushed my mental boundaries, it was taking law from being an academic thing to knowing that I'm trying to keep this guy out of prison, not because I want bad guys on the street, because the connection between point A and point B of I got a guy who committed a felony and he needs to get I need to keep him out of prison. The connecting point is not because I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal and put another bad guy back out on the street. The connecting point is he will get the therapy he needs. He will get the education that he needs. He will get the job training that he needs. He will not move in with his homies and do this again. And he will be supervised. And if we hit on all cylinders, I know that I can have a judge say, Mr. Jenuwine, I think that's a good way to go. And I can have a prosecutor say, I can agree to that. Now, if I just say, oh, but he's such a good family man. He was stealing from this, he was robbing this old lady so he could give away presents for his children, they're going to go, you're nuts.
Sure.
So I did that 5 years ago. And then I did a stint in California where I was on loan to another diocese and did all sorts of amazing things, worked with schools, did street evangelization, taught, gave retreats, did the Latin Mass every week at least once or twice, and really sharpened my pencil in a way that I couldn't have imagined as a priest. I would have figured, maybe when I'm retired, I can give a retreat. No, I'm giving a retreat. Father can give another retreat. Okay. And I was like, why me? And I guess I came to the conclusion I'm the only priest who didn't say no. But so in wrapping up the law degree, I've stumbled on another connection because one, we're all of us, all the Christian faithful are called by the church, and it's written in church law to have a preferential option for the poor. And that can mean, second collection is for the church in Central America. Put my money in. I'm done. I've done my preferential option for the poor. But I'll tell you what, there is nothing like an indigent defendant, because they come in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Everything from the kid who is shaking because he's so scared.
Yes.
To the person who thinks he knows everything and is going to tell you how you're going to make this work for him.
Yeah, the guy with the jailhouse law degree, that guy.
But you've got them all.
Yes.
And I want the same for every one of them. I want them to get the therapy they need, whether that's drug rehab or get their wheels back on track up here, because some of them have horrible pasts that have damaged them psychically.
Sure.
So you want to do the best for these people, and that's what you do.
That's great. And
to me, isn't that what Christ did?
Yeah.
And so there's the after, it's a 3-year program. It only took me 8. After finishing this degree, I know how it relates to being a priest. Now, on a more practical sense, every diocese is doing this because Rome told them to do this in the 1890s, I think, and things move slowly in the church. But every organization, including parishes, are being created into their own corporations. And it's not quite like McDonald's. You're going to lose your franchise if you don't have Ronald McDonald's smile or whatever. But it is similar to a franchise. But every parish is now incorporated as a corporation. And I've got brother priests who are like going, what? They didn't teach you how to balance your checkbook in seminary.
Right.
And now they're going, business law. And so interestingly enough, is in this last year, I crammed all my business law classes and tied up all the loose ends in my degree. And I'm like, oh, well, this is going to be useful. And this is going to be helpful to know. And this is going to provide an informed way to manage a parish.
Sure.
And not just go, I don't know, let me call the front office. I don't know, let me call the front office. That's not a way to run a business. That's not a proactive way to run a business. That's a retrograde way to run a business. You run a business like that. If you run your McDonald's franchise like that, you're going to lose your franchise.
Fair enough.
So in a certain sense, it's the law degree and I do understand, with a rudimentary background, thanks to my professors, I do understand wills and trusts now. I do know where to look. I may not know the answer immediately, but I can look it up.
Right.
And things like that. And so it's helpful. And so for me, this law degree has gone in directions I would never think of.
Sure. I'm listening to you, Father, and it is, if you don't have representation and a voice in the current modern society, you are helpless, and a really good chance you're just going to get unjustly rolled over, no matter what. And what I'm saying is that, as I was listening to you speak, by having that law degree, you're in a position to defend people worthy of defending, and who otherwise would get really hammered. Is that fair?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, because too often, the one I did the majority of my work in indigent criminal defense in the clinic. I did the majority of my work in circuit court, which is, bank robbers, felonies, big stuff. And one day, just on a whim, I sat in district court, which is misdemeanors, little stuff.
Okay.
Holy cannoli. I walked out of there and I said, how do you keep all, because it's boom, 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 boom. You're just, we would have a docket of maybe 15 to 30.
And they're just flying through it.
And they've got like 100. And it's just like, wow. It's a revolving door that is spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I'm like, wow. And I kind of, I said, I will never disrespect district court again as being, not, it's way faster than what we dealt with in circuit court. Circuit court was more, you're moving towards trial and you're moving towards sentencing and you're working on possible deals and you're trying, because that connection point between keeping this person out of prison takes time. Got to get the name in for several programs. Which one is going to take him? Which one does he qualify for? What can we do? Can we find him something? Can we get him detoxed? Can we get her counseling? Where can we get her counseling? Can we get her counseling someplace safe? Is this, what's this going to affect with children and family? You've got so many things happening, and you're just trying to help somebody get their life back on track.
Yes.
And in district court, it was much smaller things, equally bad, but there were much smaller things that didn't carry heavy penalties, and they were flying past at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I just went, wow, I gained a great deal of respect for both district and circuit felony and misdemeanor courts to understand that criminal law it is an amazing thing.
Yes.
But that's the two questions. I've probably blown you way over time.
Oh no, it's okay. I can. It's great to have you, Father. Honestly, we'll be fine. We'll just nip and tuck. But we are going to leave it there. Father David Jenuwine, I can't thank you enough. Really an interesting time spent, and I can't think of any priests who have your background and the myriad of experiences. And my takeaway was, number one, I loved your position on talking about the Latin Mass. It was very powerful to me. But I actually loved your training in engineering and languages, and the fact that you saw the need for that, and in a way kind of looked around a little bit and didn't understand what made the Catholic Church absolutely magnificent, and the primary motivator, or I should say primary reason for the glory of Western civilization, in a way kind of lost their way on that.
And being an engineer, you can look at a building.
Yes.
Great
example.
I walked into one of my assignments in California was in Petaluma. Beautiful old church built at the turn of the 20th century. And I remember looking at the stained glass windows and figuring out who is what. And one time we had about 250 elementary school kids and about 300 high school kids, or maybe the other way around, but in total 500 plus kids for all school mass. And I remember one time, I think it might have been on All Saints, that pointing to those windows and going, Linus, Cletus, Clement, Sixtus, Cornelius, Cyprian, Lawrence and Chrysogonus, John and Paul, Cosmas and Damien. And they're going, and I said, everybody kind of, I think that and maybe I'm wrong, but a lot of times people will cringe going, oh no, he's doing the long one. When you do the canon the canon of the new mass, everybody's like, but to show them where those cool part is weeks later on Sunday mass, watching the kids walk in with grandma and grandpa or mom and dad and going, or brother and sister and going,
yeah.
And they're looking for what I told them. And I said, these are the saints that surround us visually here in a beautiful old church that was Romanesque. And I learned what a Romanesque church was so that I could point out what's going on in that church. In fact, they're sitting on my bookshelf. There's a book called How to Read a Church.
Oh, wow.
Which is remarkable for when you go to any old church, or if you go to Europe, where there are plenty of beautiful old churches.
I would love to check that out. So even when you were talking before about, I think it was the Franciscan monastery, we had the Church Triumphant and the Church Militant I thought that was the coolest thing. And I know there's a code. So I've been to hundreds of churches in Europe, and I can't walk by one without walking in. They're so magnificent. But there's so much behind it going, I don't really know this. But that's very good.
Yeah, and sometime in the 70s that people kind of didn't think about that.
Yes.
That old stuff. And it's like, oh no, I've dumpster dove. In fact, this cassock is a dumpster dive.
I get the sense sometimes they purposely threw it out. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, I think it was ignorance.
Yes, right.
of what they had. And it's kind of like the spoiled kid. Every now and then we would get one in district court, or a lot in district, but some every now and then in circuit court. And it's kind of like they needed to be scared straight. They needed to be scared out of their neglect, that they look at what their parents have given them for free. And so when you walk into an old church, you got this for free, and you're like, well, I want my own. I want to make my own. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What you made the comment about stolen heritage.
Yes.
But I think it's less of a stolen heritage and more of a unappreciated or underappreciated heritage.
Great point. Maybe this will be the lightning rod, and that will change it. That people sort of realize that when they look around now, as opposed to, well, wait a minute, maybe we didn't value this like we should have.
But the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s in Western civilization, and even the 90s, we were a throwaway society.
Oh yes, of course. Right.
And now I think we're becoming less of a throwaway society. And I think now we're starting to recognize what we have and what we had, in a way that during that fast-paced, resources were unlimited, gas was a quarter. How many gallons to the mile does your car get?
Who cares?
But I mean, seriously. And then all of a sudden, it's like now, my current truck turns itself off at a stoplight.
Right.
And it's like, that's amazing.
That's right. Great point. Well, Father Jenner, we're gonna leave it there, and I want to thank you. And lastly, before we say our final goodbye to Father Jenuwine, one more time, it's important to point out that we only exist because of strong Catholics like you who support us. So if you're so inclined and can afford it, please donate to lepantoin.org/donate. Or there's another way. If you're looking for a great gift idea for yourself or somebody else, please visit our store, lepantocatholicgifts.com. We have a beautiful Sacred Heart Cross. It's solid silver, not hollow. Frankly, it really is beautiful. Michael Hitchborn designed it. He fully credits inspiration to Our Lady for this Sacred Heart Cross. We're selling this as a sacramental, and we strongly urge you to get it blessed. It's magnificent gift for any occasion. So we're going to say goodbye to our friend, Father David Jenuwine, the man of many degrees. One of the most interesting people, actually, not to embarrass you, but I've ever met. I think he's a very interesting guy. And I thank you again, Father Jenuwine, for taking the time.
God bless you. Happy to do this.
Great. Wonderful to have you. So this is Jim Maughan from the Lepanto Institute's General Quarters saying goodbye. Vivo Cristo Rey, and thanks again, Father. Talk to you soon.
All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.
God bless you.